are pretty when Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another review, and this is of a literary biography that I just finished last week. The Life of E.F. Benson by Brian Masters. Published in 1991, and the era of its publication will be important to my review. Brian Masters is apparently most famous for his biographies of serial killers, but he's also written several biographies of members of the British aristocracy, royal family, and literati. I have a complicated opinion about this book, and I want to try and tell you about it. E.F. Benson, born the year Canada became a quasi-country, 1867, died in 1940, was a preeminent novelist, biographer, and memoirist of his day, but today is most known for his Lucia series of comic novels, especially his masterpiece, Map and Lucia, which is one of my favorite novels that I've read in recent years. I've read it twice and loved it even more the second time. And it made me curious about E.F. Benson, especially since he was gay or homosexual or something like that. This was a buddy read between me and my good friend Leah, who lives in Canada, and she is a friend that I befriended on Litzy, which is a Twitter-like app for book nerds, which you should check out. And then I met Leah for the first time face-to-face at my wedding in August. This was a gift from her because when we talked about doing a buddy read of a Benson biography, I was too poor to commit, and so this was a lovely gift from Leah. We just finished our buddy read last week. And one of the things that I enjoyed the most about this biography was Masters', excuse the pun, masterful portrayal of the Benson family in total. Benson's father, Edward White Benson, became the Archbishop of Canterbury when his son Fred, I'll call him Fred, that's what the biography does. So Fred is the writer, the novelist, E.F. Benson. Father is Edward, mother's Mary. Edward Benson became the Archbishop of Canterbury when his son Fred was a teenager. E.F. Benson's parents, Edward and Mary Benson, Minnie, were fascinating and important personages in the Victorian era. So important that when Edward White Benson died, while he was still the Archbishop of Canterbury, he just keeled over in church one day. Queen Victoria offered Mary and the Benson children to come and live at Windsor Castle with her in another house on the estate. They didn't take her up on that. Why not? But very close to the royal family and all the important people of the Victorian era, prime ministers, novelists, Henry James, you name it. And that was fascinating and really well portrayed. The royalty trivia in here was delightful. Also, the entire Benson family, there were, I think, 6 children. His brother A.C. Benson was an even more prolific writer than his brother Fred. Youngest brother Hugh became a Roman Catholic, famous Roman Catholic priest. He converted later in life. Sister Maggie was famous for publishing, I believe, some archaeological books, and had a sad life otherwise. And E.F. Benson wrote a lot of crappy books, and that was fascinating. So many of his books, and I believe Masters, just from what he quoted from other people's opinions of the books and from excerpts from the books, that E.F. Benson wrote a lot of crap. But he also wrote some really good books, not only Map and Lucia, but other ones that I would be very interested in reading. Leah and I will be buddy reading his debut, Dodo, next week, and it's apparently not all that good, but it's kind of like a little bit of a literary prototype for Lucia. It's really kind of gossipy and sarcastic. Could be fun. And it made him instantly famous, and he wrote several sequels to Dodo. When was Dodo published? It was published in 18 93, and it made him so famous, and there was so much gossip about who Dodo was based on that it caused a bit of a scandal. And E.F. Benson's father, the Archbishop of Canterbury, was such a tight-ass, uptight, judgmental prick that I loved the fact that when his bachelor son, well, all of his sons were bachelors, when his bachelor son novel came out, some people began nicknaming the father, the Archbishop of Canterbury, as Dodo's papa. He wouldn't have liked that. But here's the deal about the Benson family. The Archbishop died fairly young, like maybe around age 55 or 60, and the rest of the family never married. And the rest of the family appears to have been completely gay or bi-curious or something. Nobody married. His mother, even before she married Edward Benson decades earlier, would write long passages in her diary about how attracted she was to women and stuff. And then she immediately shacked up with the previous Archbishop of Canterbury's, I can't remember if it was the previous Archbishop of Canterbury's daughter or sister, one of them, and they lived together and shared a bed for the rest of Minnie Benson's life. And E.F. Benson, well, Brian Masters doesn't quite know what to make of E.F. Benson's sexuality, and that's my main critique of the book. Arthur A.C. Benson was actually more open in his writing about his attraction to men. The sister Maggie seemed to be a lesbian, but nobody really acted on anything other than the mother Minnie and Minnie Benson, Mary Benson. I can't wait to read Britta Bowler's writing partner Rodney Bolt's biography of Mary Benson, because she was fascinating and I fell in love with her. She was a really sweet, intelligent, nurturing, warm, insightful woman. And out of the whole clan, she seems to be the one that actually had a living, breathing, interpersonal sexuality. So Brian Masters just skates around E.F. Benson's sexuality, but gives us many tantalizing clues. For example, he was friends with two of Oscar Wilde's boyfriends, and he shared a hotel room with Lord Alfred Douglas. And the two, once they were, I think, in Europe or something, maybe Egypt, I can't remember, but they shared a hotel room, and then they disappeared for several days, or people thought they disappeared, but they had never left the hotel room. And then in the next paragraph, and I'm not going to look it up chapter and verse here, but it's in the next paragraph, Brian Masters would then shoot it down, saying, well, but there's no proof, and he kept showing very clear evidence of homosexuality in various members of the Benson's family's lives and writings, and then poo-pooing it in the most heterosexist, annoying 1990s way. And it really marred this biography. E.F. Benson spent his holidays for decades in Capri, which was a gay mecca. But that doesn't show anything, he said. He never married. He had manservants that he hired at the age of 16 that stayed in his employ for decades. He had passionate friendships with men. He wrote novels about passionate male friendships at boarding school and whatnot. But no. Georgie in the Lucia novels was just a flaming queen. But oh no, not gay. And I'm making light of it now, but actually it really infuriated me. And then, just like if you remember, if Ange's and my joint review of Christopher Fowler's The Book of Forgotten Authors, where we were really perturbed by how discomfited Christopher Fowler was in writing those what few bite-sized essays there were in that book about gay male writers. The same thing has just happened for me just 2 hours ago. As I was preparing to film this review, I find out that Brian Masters is gay, or bi, but I'd say a Kinsey 5. Most of his long-term relationships have been with men. So it's his own, I don't like these overly psychologized terms, but his own internalized homophobia that caused him to write in such an agonistic, uncomfortable way about E.F. Benson's sexuality. So that just opens a whole other can of worms for me about the closets that we keep ourselves in and we write ourselves into, and a certain generation of men was never able to walk out of or write their way out of. And that's sad. There have been other biographies of E.F. Benson that take a more enlightened, non-heterosexist view of his seemingly very gay life. But yes, Brian Masters does have a point and does make one point convincingly, because he quotes from Benson's novels and other writings to show that E.F. Benson, like many gay men of his era, but like Oscar Wilde's famous speech at his trial, "The love that dare not speak its name," it had nothing to do with beastly sexual carnality. It was just about a deep friendship, sensual friendship. And that, according to the many quotations from E.F. Benson's own writing, was Benson's personal belief. And so perhaps he didn't have much of a overtly sexual life. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The history of homosexuality is as much about the disavowals and denials. I'm quoting a famous literary critic here, so if I happen to momentarily sound profound, it's because I'm plagiarizing. I can't remember where I got that from, but I wrote an essay about two Irish women writers, Somerville and Ross, around the same era, that lived together and wrote together, and wrote an article that was published about it, and quoted some queer theorist about that, Jonathan Goldberg or something. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes. But anyway, if you're interested in the history of gay male lives in the 19th and 20th century, perhaps into the 21st century, I hope not, the disavowals and the closetedness and the split between love and sex, it's just embedded in every life and every text about every gay life. One of the most piercing gay autobiographies I've ever read is J.R. Ackerley's My Father and Myself, where he just pierces right down to the heart of the matter, where he says, my sexual desire, he doesn't say my heart and my dick, because he was writing in the 1960s, but basically my heart and my dick have lain in separate compartments and have never come together. And as a uncomfortably homosexual biographer writing about an uncomfortably, presumably homosexual writer, this biography, as infuriating as it was to read on sexuality, is, in fact, an important artifact of that decades and centuries long historical, personal mess of a split between the heart and the dick. So I would read another biography by Brian Masters. I'm not interested in serial killers, but I would like to read his biography of Marie Corelli, a dime store novelist that was the basis for Lucia, in fact, and maybe some of his other aristocratic or royal biographies. But he is not a go-to person to unravel the dysfunctional tangle, historical and biographical and psychological, about these issues, but he is worth reading to show how gay men have just entangled and entangled and entangled. That being said, I kind of recommend it. I will not soon forget it. And I'm looking forward to reading some more of E.F. Benson's non-shitty books, and reading much more about his, particularly his mother's and other members of his family, lives. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.